As we are about to start our study today, as always, we start with a message from the book Opening Doors Within. Why not be an optimist in this life, always expecting the best, always finding the best, always creating the best? Optimism leads to power. Pessimism leads to weakness and defeat. Let the power of the Spirit shine in and through you, creating around you a world of beauty, peace, and harmony. When your outlook on life is optimistic, you lift all those souls around you, giving them hope, faith, and belief in life. You will always life that your optimism will create optimism and will snowball. There is always hope in life, even if it is but a tiny flickering spark to begin with. When it is surrounded with hope and love in the right atmosphere, that tiny spark will be fanned into flame, and it will grow and grow until you are on fire with the fuel of the Spirit, which is unquenchable and unextinguishable. Once it has been ignited, nothing will be able to stop it spreading. And in that way, we start our meeting with our prayer. As immortal beings as we all are, present in this ambient of peace, light, and love. May we all incarnate in all of those in the Spirit who are with us, to calm our minds and hearts as learners of the universal laws that we all are, positioning ourselves as students, feeling pleased with this unique opportunity in our lives that the Creator is granted to every and each one of us. Blessed by the enlightened spirits who are with us, inspiring us and helping us to learn a bit more about the dissatisfaction of life and suicide, which is the topic that we are reflecting on. May the light from Jesus enlighten our minds and hearts, that we all may learn to value our lives, to learn to go through the experiences that we all need in order to learn, to grow, to evolve, and to progress. Understanding that all the experiences, challenges, are temporary. We all are blessed and supported by those who love us. And in that state of mind, we start our meeting today. So good. And in that way, we carry on our studies as students, as we all are, learning with each other, studying the Spirit's book, ourselves and all of those in the Spirit, and also those who may be following us through the internet. May we all feel blessed by the enlightened beings who love us and care about us, as we choose to be here and to learn together about the chapter Hopes and Consolations within the sub-item Dissatisfaction with Life, Suicide. We carry on today at the question 952. But before that, we go through the final part of the question 951. I just read the question. I think I still have it here. Yes, just for us to situate ourselves. And then we go through the final bit, which is the note, which we didn't have time last week. So the question 951 of the Spirit's book says, isn't the sacrifice of one's life sometimes meritorious when it is made in order to save the lives of others or to be useful to one's neighbor? That is what we reflecting lately last. And then we were just left with this last paragraph to go through the final understanding. I also read it and then we reflect. Every sacrifice made at the cost of our own happiness is a supremely meritorious act in God's sight, for it is the practice of the law of charity. Additionally, since life is the earthly asset that we value the most, those who renounce it for the good of their neighbor do not commit a crime. They perform a sacrifice. Nonetheless, before doing so, they should consider that everyday life might not be more useful than their death. Now let's reflect about what do we learn in this response that the spirits are giving to us for us as students who are learning about dissatisfaction with life and suicide. What comes to our minds? When we read the first phrase which says, every sacrifice made at the cost of our own happiness is supremely meritorious act in God's sight. What are we learning here? Are we invited to sacrifice our personal interests? Is that what we are asked to reflect? Sacrifice our own personal interests so that we can be of help to develop happiness to somebody else? Is it also inviting us to be sincere and honest within ourselves? Is that what comes to our minds? Because that reflects the practice of the law of charity. Here we are reminded the practice of the law of charity, not the theory of law of charity. The practice differs from theory when we choose to go through our behaviors, through our actions, and behave according to the law of charity, which is the law of God, which is the law of love, to help each other without personal interests. Is that what comes to our minds? Any other idea? And additionally, since life is the earthly asset that we value the most, those who renounce it for the good of their neighbor do not commit a crime. So here we are helped to understand each moment that we choose to practice goodness from the depths of our hearts without any personal or secondary intention, then we are moving according to God's will in helping each other. And therefore, it wouldn't be an act of crime if we go and help somebody else and perhaps we may die through that. Is that making sense? It's clarifying us what is a crime in terms of suicide and what is not. Is that what we get here? Nonetheless, in doing so, they should consider whether their life might not be more useful than their death. So again, even that, on the end, we are, let's say, invited to reflect about what are we doing or what we are about to do, if that is value our life, or if we may choose even to jump into some situation that could lead to death. Would that be more important for us, or would it be more important for us to value our own life? Is that what we learn? Any other idea there? No? Okay. So it's almost helping all of us as we are under the subtitle Dissatisfaction with Life, Suicide. It is always reflecting to help us and all of us to learn to value our own life. And why is that? Because our life has been given by God. And then we are always responding to Him in every initiative that we take. Is that clear? So we move on now then on the question 952. And the question is quite long here and says, is it considered suicide for those who die as victims of the abuse of their own passions, which they knew would hasten their end, but which they could no longer resist because habit turned their passions into true physical needs? Let's explore the question. What is the question about? When we take the first part, How could we reframe it in our own words? Is it considered suicide for those who die as victims of their abuse of their own passions? Is that considered? Which kind of passions is Allan Kardec referring here? They are referring to us as incarnates, isn't it? The question is referring to us. So I read it again. Is it considered suicide for those who die as victims of the abuse of their own passions? Which kind of passions on the human level can lead us to death? Which kind of passion? Examples. Which kind of? Examples of passions, us as immortal beings who are in the physical body on earth, that could lead to death, which could be
ego.
Ego.
Because I don't know if it's egocentric.
The egocentric. I think here the passions like drugs can be analyzed through the passion of drugs. Passions are our inferior tendencies, yes? To drugs, to alcohol, excessive, we smoke as well, that causes damage to ourselves, precisely. Yes, it's clear, the first part, which they knew would hasten their end, but which they could no longer resist, because habit turned their passions into true physical needs. So sometimes we as immortal beings, we do know that drugs is causing us harm and we can die through that. But still we may not resist because we conditioned our physical body through the habit, through the repetition. Is that making sense?
For example, I cannot stop smoking. I cannot stop smoking. I continue smoking. Yes.
It's not that I cannot stop. Because as children of God, we bring God's laws within us, and He gave us the faculty of freedom that He expects us to activate in developing it. We can always stop any inferior passion as long as we choose to. But when they say here, but which they could no longer resist because their habit turned into passions. So the habit become automatized, but it's not that we cannot stop it. Because sooner or later, we all need to learn to overcome our passions, our inferior tendencies. Yes, is that clear? So let's see now what the enlightened spirits are telling us. They are saying, it is a moral suicide. Let's go through gradually. What do we understand about it is a moral suicide?
Exactly what is.
Because remember the question, I'll go back the question again. On the end they say, but which they could no longer resist because habit turned their passions into true physical needs. Physical is talking about the physical body, because we condition the body through the habits that we have. Now the enlightened spirits start by saying it is a moral suicide. Why? Are we physical beings or moral beings? Moral. We are essentially psychological and emotional beings who express ourselves through the physical body. Correct? So still, even if I conditioned myself in that passion, that is my responsibility, and that I need to respond sooner or later, but the essence of the passion of the habit is not ingrained only on the body. It is on the physical body through the way that I think and feel through previous existences or through this existence. So it is a moral. When we say psychological and emotional beings, that means essentially we are moral individuals. Is that making sense? Moral suicide, because why is it a moral suicide? I said already because we are psychological and emotional beings. But what does it mean when we refer it is a moral suicide? When we choose to feed the inferior passions, are we choosing to behave according to the natural laws? According to God's law? Are we choosing to? Of course not. God didn't create us to be with passions, to use drugs that we kill ourselves. God created us simple and ignorant, and He wants us to use the free will in a responsible way and learn to behave internally and externally, making choices according what is healthy for us. Because who gave the physical body to us? Who gave the physical body to us?
That is mother.
God.
God.
God is responsible for our physical body. This is why we commit a crime when we commit suicide. We always respond to every choice, to every initiative towards God, who is the creator of everything and everyone. Yeah? Okay? Then we carry on. Don't you see that they are doubtly guilty in such a case? Why doubtly guilty? Doubtly guilty means twice. It's not just once, but it's twice. So the moral suicide is a double guilt. Why? They lack courage and will to the brutalness. Moreover, they forget about God. Do we understand why the Spirit say, don't you see that they are doubtly guilty in such a case? We have the answer here. They lack courage. Why do we lack courage? To overcome our passions. Why do we lack courage? Because that is what the Spirit say. They lack courage and give up to brutalness or primitiveness. So again, we are not using our free will to overcome our past habits, which are against our essential nature, which is goodness, which is learning to value life, to respect life, and not to disrespect life. Understanding that our lives is connected with the Creator, with God. And moreover, they forgot about God. When the spirits remind us they forgot about God, that means that we probably, when we are under their passions, we are more in our psychic, is still on the materialistic reference. My life is this physical body, and whatever I do, I'm entitled to do. And if I die, I die. There's nothing else beyond it. So I'm not open yet towards the natural laws in life that actually one existence in the physical body is just a tiny bit in the continuation of the spirit within the immortality of existences. Is that making sense? Yeah? Okay, let's move on to the question 952a. Claudinise, would you like to read it for us, please?
Are they more or less guilty than those who shorten their life out of despair?
Let's reflect now what this question means. Understanding as we go through, reflecting about the topic, dissatisfaction with life, suicide, each question has a different aspects that Allan Kardec is helping us to understand, and Enlightened Spirits are bringing these teachings. So what do we understand of this question if we were to reframe it according to our own words and understanding at present? Are they more or less guilty than those who shorten their life out of despair? Do we see that this question is related to the previous one? Yeah? We still remember the previous one? Is it considered suicide for those who die as victims of the abuse of their own passions, which they knew would hasten their end, but which they could no longer resist because habit turned their passions into true physical need? Now this question is, are they more or less guilty than those who shorten their life out of despair? What is the difference of this question in relation to the previous one?
I think it is asking, is the ones that commit suicides in the way that they give into their passions more or less guilty of the ones that commit suicide out of their desperation, out of their ignorance?
Okay, good. It's precisely that. And let's see what the Enlightened Spirits say. We go through gradually. They start by saying they are guilty because they had time to reason about their suicide. What do we understand with that first phrase?
I think it is bringing to light that once one is getting into their passions, their habits, they still have time because it's not something that is um, out of desperation when you don't think, when you're just reacting.
By instinct, I think
By
the despair
instinct,
is more.
it's something that has just happened and you don't realize, you don't rationalize about it. You feel it and then you just go and do something out of, the moment. But when you give in into a habit and you build that over time and you keep choosing that and you keep doing it, many things happen in that time and you don't give any importance. You choose not to look at it, you choose not to see it.
Precisely.
So you don't do it instantly, you do it slowly.
Yes, and also participating. Because we know when we are, everyone who may be in situation of trying or thinking about committing suicide, we always have the assistance of the good spirits as well, who are inspiring us for us to do. And a lot of people sometimes, or something that we may be reading, because the universe is helping us constantly to value life, and we may reject it because we have the reductionist view about ourselves that we may consider just a body, or even through rebelliousness sometimes. There are so different means, different ways that people can consider. But what the spirits are saying through this first phrase, they are guilty because they had time to reason about their suicide. Means we have time to think, to reflect about it, while the desperation, which is an instinctive move, is different. Then they carry on saying, for those who commit suicide on the spur of the moment, there is sometimes a kind of delirium that approaches insanity. The former will be punished much more than the later, because punishments are always in proportion to the awareness of one's wrongdoing. What comes to our minds now when we follow the next part? What do we understand about punishment here? As the students of the teachings of the universal principles, how do we understand currently the word punishments? Any idea? Because they say the former will be punished much more than the later, because punishment are always in proportion to the awareness of the one's wrongdoing. Would we be right in saying that punishment means consequences? The consequences will be according to our intentions? Would that be what the spirits are trying to teach us here?
I think that for the ones that choose day by day to give into their bad habits and destroying their body within the addictions they created and they choose to carry on, they will have much more work to do because they will have the knowledge of the choices they did every day. And to do those choices backwards, to choose life, then they may become in a much more difficult situation where they have to fight for their life as much as they gave out of it every time. So you be a question of having to learn to value what they gave out, what they thrown out slowly. So once you have to do that, you have to go through that situation. Is bigger.
Yes, it is more challenging for us. It is more challenging. So the punishment is not in terms of punishing someone. It means that the experience that is there if I choose to commit suicide. But the experience for me to learn and grow still is there. It will be next time around more challenging for me. More challenging in a sense that I need to learn to put more effort into overcoming my weak points, my passions, in choosing to develop the virtues. Which kind of virtues does the spirit need to develop in order to overcome suicidal thoughts or actions? Which kind of virtues does the spirit need to develop in terms of overcoming suicidal thoughts or actions? Because if you committed suicide in one existence, and we will always be granted a new life again, new existence again, I bring the old tendencies with me, isn't it? Sooner or later, those thinking, those thoughts will be there. So what does the spirit need to learn to overcome these suicidal thoughts and actions? Humbleness. First, I think, yes, it is for all of us, humbleness. Why is the virtue of humbleness so important for us?
Because when we are rebellious, when we are too proud, we don't obey the laws, we don't follow what is right. We choose to do it whatever way we might be pleased with, without thinking of the consequences,
Okay.
or that there is a law to follow, there is something more than just my desires, my wishes to go through, and that I cannot just do as I please. So my proudness is not bigger than my duties.
Okay. Humbleness is important for us to learn obedience and resignation, because that is what we are lacking when we consider suicide, when we are facing our own history. Because the challenges are not outside us. The challenges are inside us. So resignation and obedience means to flexibilize our hearts and minds in understanding that we are immortal beings created by God with love that is willing to help us for us to grow and learn through the experiences that we are facing. So when I choose to flexibilize my heart and mind, it becomes easier to go through the challenging moments, understand that they are temporary. They are not forever, and they are not there to cause me pain, although it may be challenging as I'm learning. They are not there to punish me, because I understand that I'm not a victim of others' night of life. I'm a victim of myself. And as I'm humble and becoming more humble, I can do that self-embracing movement in terms of accepting my own destiny as a valuable human being, or a valuable being as I am, even imperfect, perfecting myself in constant learning, without guilt, giving myself a new opportunity, because God always gives everyone new opportunities. We need to choose to embrace those. So humbleness, and which other virtue do we as immortal beings to learn to develop in order to overcome eventual negative and suicidal thoughts? Humbleness, we said resignation and obedience. What else? What else is important? Would I be right in saying responsibility? Because if you don't learn to be responsible for the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we choose how to behave and to act, then I also may be blaming others. But this evolution is not about blaming, it's taking responsibility. And responsibility, as we always learn, is the internal power of internal autonomy. Despite I may think or consider suicide, I choose immediately to re-educate myself and start to value life. Value the opportunities that may be challenging for me, but learn through them and come out stronger. Any other virtue that is important? Apart from humbleness, responsibility, resignation, obedience, what else is important here? Anything else? Persistence is important. If we don't persist in renewing ourselves, in training our minds and hearts in goodness, will we succeed? No. So persistence is another virtue which is very important. Tolerance towards ourselves. If you don't get things right at the beginning, don't give up. Carry on training, carry on exercising. Be tolerant and repeat the experience that's to the level that we succeed within it. Any other? Persistence, tolerance, determination, for sure, we need to also develop. Discipline is another virtue which we need to discipline ourselves with. Discipline ourselves with. Interesting. Because the inferior passions, have been conditioned through our irresponsibility. We used the free will in a responsible way. We did the wrong choices, and we moved our existences and our experiences in an indisciplined way. Would you agree with that? Yeah. So there are more others, but let's move on here then. Now we carry on the question 953. Rodney, read it for us, please.
When individuals see an inevitable and terrible death in front of them, is it wrong to shorten their suffering by a few moments through intentional death?
Okay, let's explore the question first. What is this question referring specifically? How do we understand it today? Of course, our understanding is changing as we evolve, but today, if you were to frame it according to our understanding.
If one is suffering or is in front of great suffering, is it right to shorten their suffering by taking out their life?
Okay, do we have examples of this?
Yes.
On Earth? Yes? Which kind of examples do we have on Earth currently?
Terminated illness.
Terminating
People
illness.
have asked for family and loved ones to terminate their lives.
Yeah.
The ones that choose to do it when they face the end of an illness.
Correct. They don't want to go through the end because, again, why do we choose to do that? Because we lack understanding about God's laws, as it was referred previously. We are still under the materialistic viewpoint of life. What is my body? I do what I want to. And according to God's laws, it's not our body. The body is giving and is granted for us to take care of it. But we all respond towards God. So also not going through suffering means that I'm a very immature psychologically, emotionally. I don't want to develop myself so that I mature, that I support the experiences as a learner to go through. Is that making sense?
Many times the person wants to submit themselves to a position or a situation that they may feel will
Vulnerable.
vulnerable, or they feel will make of them less
Precisely.
than what they are.
Yes.
They don't want to be submitted, to be taken care by others. They
True.
feel that is would be a shame.
Precisely. And why is that?
Pride.
We are guided by
Ignorance.
pride
Yeah.
and also ignorance in relation to the natural laws of life, in relation to brotherhood, because at the end of the day, we all need help and support to each other as we are going through. But the major problem here is pride. I feel in my ignorance that I'm self-sufficient, that I don't want to depend on others. And if I reach a level in my life that I may not manage by myself, I don't submit myself to the help of others, because that would be a great suffering for the ego.
Yeah. We see nowadays a lot of suicide of elderly.
Yeah.
And we can understand that is through the distance of the family, and once they face themselves in this situation, they no longer are functional on themselves, and they will need to rely on someone else. Then they make this choice of the short escape.
Yes.
Because they believe it's better to do that than to ask for the help they need.
Some of them, or we may also even question ourselves, we don't know where we are later on, but some of them think also they don't want to give any work to the family, to those who are around, and that is a wrong way of thinking. Some people find it so challenging to be in a home for elders, as we have here in this country, for instance, which are very good to look after. Why is that? Why they don't want to go there? Because again, they don't want to submit themselves that other people look after, but it also quite often may refer to the control of the ego that the person still is dominated by. Yes? And we are here to go through the experiences, understanding. We are immortal beings learning through them. What do we usually learn in these moments? Again, we go back to humility, resignation, and obedience. Sometimes, and another example that we still have in our society is when some people reach the level of dementia and they cannot accept themselves, that they cannot function psychologically anymore as they used to. And sometimes it can happen very quickly in some cases. When we are lacking moral values, we find challenging that. But when we are developing ourselves as moral beings, as we are essentially, we choose to submit ourselves and go through, understanding that is a transitory experience that the body goes through, and we as spirits are invited to grow, to mature, to develop ourselves in new values, which are internal, which are not related to the physicality of ourselves. They are related to our psychological and emotional dimension. We can always carry on thinking, because although the body becomes limited sometimes, but we carry on thinking as immortal beings. And also we can re-educate our emotions. We can submit ourselves, and therefore, once the body comes to the end, with the disease or without the disease, which is a natural process, we emerge stronger.
What are the ones that find themselves in illness, like the cancer or other illness, and they choose not to go through treatment, but let the illness take over, would fit in this question?
I think, again, we always refer to the intentions. But if I need to go through a treatment that is referring to me, and these days, yes, people can choose if they want to go through, choose by the doctors if they want to go through the treatment or not. But if we don't accept the treatment, we are neglecting to look after ourselves. And what usually happens is that if you, at least how far I know in relation to cancer, if we go through the treatment, sometimes we shorten the lifespan because it has side effects. But if we don't, we may have a shorter life, but quality life. So within, I understand, Spiritism is we need to always take advantage of every therapy that is available on the human level, because the human science is extension of the divine science that is helping us to put the effort into. Because for me to go through a treatment, do I also need to work my pride? I need to work my pride, because as more prideful we are, we don't submit ourselves sometimes to treatment. We don't want to go to hospital. We don't want to be in that settings where we see ill people, because we think we are better and more special. So humbleness, resignation, I also need to develop that in order to submit myself to be looked after, to go through the treatments that I don't have control how they will interact within my physical level, my physical body. Okay. Let's see what the Enlightened Spirits are saying here regarding the question 953. I just read the question again to make sense for the answer. When individuals see an inevitable and terrible death in front of them, is it wrong to shorten their suffering by a few moments through intentional death? It is always wrong not to wait for the term set by God. Besides, how can they tell with certainty whether their time has indeed come, despite appearances, or whether they might receive some unexpected help at the last moment? So what do we learn here by the teachings of the Enlightened Spirits? What is that telling about us? It is always wrong not to wait for the term set by God. What comes to our minds through that? So what do I, as a mortal being, need to learn? Obedience is to develop my own willpower in relation to the will of God. Is that what it says here? Patience, precisely. Things are not as I would like them to be from a narrow-minded way. Yeah, sometimes as immortal beings we don't remember now our past experiences that are manifesting through the experiences in the present. But when we submit ourselves with resignation, with patience, we go through the experiences, and quite often, according to what the spirits teach us, when we disincarnate, then we become aware why we went through that experience. Because we are under the law of cause and effect. Yeah? Besides, how can they tell with certainty whether their time has indeed come? Of course, we don't know. When is the exact moment for us to disincarnate? And in any moment, as we read in this question, can be a very valuable and enriched moment for us to redo our own thinking or our belief systems, to actualize our own history through our perispirit, isn't it? And that makes the whole difference for the next existence, for the next reincarnation. Anybody else? Anything to add? It's very clear, this bit, yeah? Now we move to the question 953a, which says, we admit that suicide is reprehensible under ordinary circumstances, but we are supposing a case in which death is inevitable and in which life is only shortened by a few instances. What is that referring here? It is extending on the previous question, isn't it? And what is it referring? So what are the key words here?
I think it's what is saying ordinary circumstances, and we say that is inevitable. But as I said previously, how do we know it's inevitable? It may look like in the material view that death is certain, is just a day away or hour away, and the pain the person is going through may seem too much, and I may be inclined to shorten them off.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I know that?
Precisely. We don't
How
know.
could we know for sure, or know the purpose of it?
Precisely. So the key words here, I would say, is by few instances. These are the key words in this question. For us, may say, well, I will die anyway. It's just a question of seconds now. Just go and do it now. But within the teachings of the Enlightened Spirits, it's not so, because we don't know, as I just said, how many instants are left and for what purpose. But the main point is always about learning. And then they carry on teaching us. Nevertheless, it displays a lack of resignation and of submission to the will of the Creator. So again, making it very clear, Allan Kardec is asking from different angles, just to leave it very clear for us that in all of them, we need to learn to develop obedience and resignation in relation to the will of God. And the will of God is never to punish us, it's always to help us to evolve, to progress, and really to develop real happiness in the long term. Is that clear? Carry on now on a question. Still is not ready. This question still carry on asking another now. 953b. What in this case are the consequences of such action? This case, what do we mean? Shortening life when there's just few instants left. Yes, and then they say, as always, expiation in proportion to the seriousness of the wrong, according to the circumstances. What comes to our minds now?
To me comes the understanding of the life out of the body, that I may be incarnated to live 50 years, and I'm on my 40 with a terminal illness, and I may be 1 or 2 more years in that situation and spare the life I would have the other 10 years to spare. But then I just shorten my life by a year, and instead of staying in the body and going through a year and then discarnating, disconnecting from my physical body, I terminate my life a year shorter and stay 10 years within the composition of my body.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an expiation, much harder to go through than to stay 1 year.
Precisely, to submit myself to the process following the God's laws, isn't it?
Because when we look at the material way, all is dying, is decomposing already, so let's just, end with this. But we don't see in the spiritual way what are the consequences for the spirit. So for me here to think, it's too much suffering, and I will end this now, I may end for someone else, and I'm here and I'm not seeing what is happening with them in the spiritual world, that they're going through much more pain and much more suffering than if they would have stayed here and with being patient.
Yes, and we within that way of addressing it, we are not considering the causes of that experience that we're going through. Within Spiritism, which refers to the law of reincarnation and the immortality of the soul, We are all beings who have been living for many and many, many existences, many centuries. And we bring the consequences of previous causes outside God's laws. So when we go through what looks in our eyes suffering, because the superior spirits don't see the experience as suffering, they see as liberation. You see how different is the view, how they address. The superior beings see those experiences as liberation, which is true. It's the real healing that is going on within the spirit. That makes a huge difference. Now the question 954. It is an imprudent act that compromises life without necessity reprehensible? How could we reframe this question? That perhaps could also help others who are with us understand better. Is an imprudent act that compromises life without necessity reprehensible?
I think this is asking if I put my life in risk just for a gain, is that reprehensible? Because we've been talking about suicide and we've been talking about giving in to passions and addictions, and I'm just saying, even if I'm not addicted to anything that is destroying my body, but I choose to just do something that may shorten my life, there is a possibility that I may die, and I choose to do it just because, I have nothing else better to do. How is that seen?
Okay, and do we still have this kind of imprudent acts on earth?
I think nowadays more than before.
We do have a lot. Examples. Which kind of example? Sorry?
Parachuting.
What? Parachuting?
Yeah, I said bungee jump, which people may not think it is, but there is a greater risk
Yes.
of certain death
Precisely.
on these kind of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Because we call it sports, we call it enjoyment, entertainment, or whatever we may think, but the speed race cars
Precisely.
competitions that happens in the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and many other things that we nowadays surround together to
It's
enjoy
also-
them,
yes.
to make them happen, and you think, oh, it's just entertainment.
But when we look within the natural laws or in the universe, are those sports only entertainment? We are putting ourselves in risk, isn't it? There are other sports as well that we need to look. Those who are compromising our lives, I think these are imprudent acts because we are here to value our life. There is nothing against sports, well, on the contrary, there is a healthy way of interacting socially as long as the sports are not compromising our lives. Because then we already are going through the excesses, isn't it? We are talking about the excesses, which quite often may be driven by pride, depending the sports by vanity, selfishness, isn't it? When we look within that, that is behind. So that is not, let's say, healthy for us. And then we learn to answer, there is no culpability when there is no positive intention or consciousness of doing harm. What do we learn now here? So if there is no intention of doing harm, then there is no culpability, isn't it? Is that what they're saying? So we need to learn more about ourselves, about our physical body from a transpersonal perspective, understanding life from this transpersonal understanding. So although the possibilities of the experience on earth are available to us, but we use our free will in a responsible way, knowing what the consequences would be, and because we more and more value our lives, value our bodies, we will no longer choose those experiences for us. Okay? Now we move to the question 955. Would you like to read it for us, please?
Are the women who in some countries intentionally burn themselves to death or the body of their husband to be considered as having committed suicide? And must they suffer the consequences of it?
Okay, let's explore the question. How do you understand it? If you were to reframe it. or anyone. What is this question specifically referring to?
I think it is asking if one commits suicide due to their traditions or their culture, is it still considered the act in itself as suicide, as the same consequences of the ones that do it within the culture's passion or addiction or just desperation? Is it the same?
Correct.
Because this case, the one who's doing it, because it's not just their choice, it is how life expects them to act.
What the culture presents, yes, what society depends on. Okay.
So the person don't have within them that they are doing something wrong. They believe they are doing it right.
Okay, good. Let's see what we learn here by the Enlightened Spirit through this answer here. They say they obey a prejudice and usually do it more out of coercion than of their own view. They believe they are fulfilling a duty, and this is not what characterizes suicide. Their excuse is the ignorance and lack of moral development in most of them. Such barbarous and stupid customs will disappear with civilization. What do we learn now? Thank God that it will disappear, isn't it? It is better already when we look our evolution as it happened, but still we have it.
Yeah. It reminds me of the culture that did sacrifice of children as well with animals.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays we don't really have that anymore. It's very little. It's not known, not spoken of anymore. The people who still have these kind of things, they are more
Remote.
yeah, they are more hidden
Yeah.
from society. So these costumes, they are not in a
Open.
open,
Right. Yeah.
not in big countries or in many places. It's within a small culture.
And why is no longer in the open?
Because we evolved.
Because we evolved, society, we as members of society evolved, and also the laws in the society evolved. Because these days, in relation to the children, we sacrifice, we have the law who really protects the children these days. In most places, although in the remote places, sometimes it's still through the cultural values, which is a very primitive state of development, it still may happen. Yeah. Anything else? Clear? Very clear here. And then the question 956 says, to those who cannot bear the loss of loved ones and kill themselves in the hope of rejoining them, accomplish their objective? How could we reframe this question? This question, although it has been raised by Allan Kardec around 160 years ago, but it still is quite necessary to reflect in these days, isn't it? So what is the question about? Do we still have people who may choose to kill themselves because they want to be with the loved ones? Yeah? So if they think they will be with the loved ones, do they believe in the reincarnation process or in the immortality of the soul?
Not really, I believe. I believe they believe in a sect that brings a one setting only, that there is a place for the souls, but they all the same. And if one has left, they have the choice to choose to live and go be with them in that place as well, which is an illusion. But the person may believe that truly and fully, that this is how it is, not believing that there is reincarnation, there is a spiritual world the way it is, but within this adverse understanding that there may be heaven and the one I love is there and I can just go there.
Okay. So it's almost like the heaven referring to a place. And not a state of mind.
Yeah.
So I don't yet understand that we all will end up after the physical body in a state of mind as we are here. Yeah? Okay, let's see what we learn with the enlightened beings will say to us here. The result for them is much different than what they hoped for. Instead of being reunited with the objectives of their affections, they keep themselves away from them even longer, because God cannot reward an act of cowardice and insult which demonstrates distrust in divine providence. They will pay for that moment of insanity with afflictions even greater than those they wish to shorten, and they will not receive the reward that had hoped for. Apart from what you said already, what comes to our minds here? That is very important. Even for us who still are in the flesh, for those who are in the spirit with us, who may have committed this act of indifference in relation to the natural laws, we are all learning that if my dear one departs before me, I'm requested to stay on earth and carry on my journey as long as God is willing for me to stay, and accept God's will. And if I choose to kill myself with the intention that I will end up with the dear ones, the reality is that I will not be able to do that. Why? Because my act of disobedience of the natural laws is distancing myself from the dear one. And then I need to redo my lesson, and then later on I may be in contact again. Which is the way that we keep connected with each other. Is it through love? When we learn to love each other, when we learn to respect God's will, then we will become closer and closer once we depart from the physical level. Is that clear? Yeah? Okay. Then we have the next one, 957. In general, what are the consequences of suicide on the state of the spirit? We have a lot of questions regarding suicide. We can see how much Allan Kardec was worried in his time, and yet when suicide is so in high in the current state where we are. The consequences of suicide vary widely. There are no set penalties, and in all cases, they are always relative to causes that produce them. One consequence from which those who commit suicide cannot escape, however, is disappointment. Besides, the fate is not the same for all. It depends on circumstances. Some expiate their wrong at once, whereas others do so in a new life that will be worse than the one whose course they cut short. What comes to our minds here now? So for sure, the main key here is that we will, if we commit suicide, if we kill ourselves because we want to be with the dear one who departed before us, through the movement of immortality of the soul, sooner or later we will wake up spiritually, and we will find ourselves very disappointed, because we will not be in the place and with those that we think we may be. So clear? So disappointment is one thing. You mentioned previously illusion, so we will be quite disillusioned. And another is to expiate the wrong, which means I still need to go through experiences to learn to submit myself to a greater power or a greater will that my own immature wishes that I may still have as a mortal being. The questions are a bit different, but are constantly referring to this part. Let's finish the note here on the question 957. It's quite long. We leave that for the next day because there are a lot of things that we can look and we won't have time to go through. In order for us to conclude here our reflections, it's important for us to think and value our lives in any situation that we find ourselves, because the experiences are transitory, aiming to bring experiences for us as we submit ourselves as immortal beings and learn. The major point usually is learn to develop the virtues, which we still are quite, let's say, at the beginning of it. And we all are learners, and if we commit suicide or if we kill ourselves, let's forgive ourselves, let's accept experience as learners and accept the help of the enlightened beings, wherever we are and with who we are, to move forward and to grow, because we all will have new possibilities to renew our destinies. And in that way, we are coming to the end. with our hearts with gratitude towards our lives, towards the experiences in our lives, towards the understanding of the immortality of the soul, towards the understanding that we are all immortal beings, essentially beings of love, of kindness, which we are learning to develop. May we all choose in these moments, which we are helped by Buddha, to insist and to persist in valuing our experiences from a higher perspective. If you don't know, if you may feel in despair, let's ask for help. There is always help as long as we are willing to ask. Life is given by God. God loves us all and invites us all to grow within, developing self-love, self-respect, self-value. As we are on earth, any and all experiences are transitory. There is no need to despair as long as we accept God's will, which is always helping us to evolve, to progress, and to become stronger with love, peace, and light. So